Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about transit north node, square, opposition, or inconjunct one's natal Uranus. When we're talking about transits that involve the north node, they can be about one's future, one's destiny, one's mission, one's purpose, what you're learning and aspiring to be, where you feel you're directed toward. And when you have transit north node basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Uranus, well, when I'm saying basically adverse aspect, okay, the squares and oppositions, of course, those aspects are adverse and negative in astrology. Now, the inconjunct, though it's a neutral aspects can have good and bad qualities, and coupled with the fact that an inconjunct can often require an adjustment or transition, and those things of course can cause some exasperation and tension. So collectively I do see this as an adverse transit. Now again, when you're talking about transit north node, basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Uranus, it may manifest in one's future, one's destiny, one's mission and purpose, what you're learning and aspiring to be, where you're directed toward. Those things might conflict with your goals, with your aspirations at this time. It's interesting because these energies are very similar. The North Node can be, what you're learning and aspiring to be. Uranus is connected with with your future, with your goals and aspirations. So you might feel you're in some kind of tug of war at this time, torn between where you want to go, and that's where this transit can be very tension filled. You could have the North Node being say transit North Node is in Leo, which is about more about you could say attention seeking. It's flamboyant, being flamboyant, and getting notoriety, recognition, being in the spotlight. And if the natal Uranus is in Aquarius, you might be more what you're actually drawn toward more, and really during your life, since it's a natal placement, is more about blending in with groups and being more unobtrusive, inconspicuous, doing things more for the team, and not being so much about being out there and being in the spotlight. And the thing is, this could be a time too where you might feel, at this time, since the North Node is connected with the future and the destiny, and Uranus is about friendships, you might not feel that your future or your destiny it lies, at least at this time, with your current friendships. It doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily detach yourself from them or extricate yourself from their lives, from them, but you might not feel, if they've been figured prominently in where you've gone in your life previously. This could be the time where you might feel like, okay, this is not these people are not going to be there at this time, or maybe they're just not part of your life in general at this time. Since the North Node is connected with the future, they might not be there, at least for that immediate future, but for whatever reason. And Uranus is connected with the future as well. So again, this could be a time where it could be very challenging in terms of where your future lies, because the North Node is connected with the future. Uranus is also associated with your future, and you might not really quite see where you really want to go until this transit is actually complete. There might be a time, Uranus is also associated with rebellion. And the thing is, let's say you have your natal Uranus in the 5th house. That placement natally may indicate some non-conforming or rebellious children or lovers. And the transit, when you have the transit of the North Node, again, basically making an adverse aspect to it, it could indicate that you feel you don't want your future dealing with this situation at this time, and that's what can cause a lot of exasperation and tension during this transit. Excuse me. Now, again, now what I want to say is Uranus is also very erratic and sporadic energy, so it might be a time too where you may be, you might be looking at your future, where you're destined to be at this time. and it might be going through some fluctuation. You might be starting it 1 minute and pausing it um, the next minute, and you might have a hard time finding your consistency in whatever it is you're trying, what you're aspiring to be at this point in time, the qualities and attributes you may be trying to develop. And also, too, I mean, the North Node is also connected with, when you're talking about the North Node in transit, it can be about issues one may have to address and confront. And when you have this transit with the North Node, again, basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Uranus, well, these things might affect your future negatively. Because remember, the Uranus is also connected with the future, and it might be harder to pursue what you want to do, what you want to aspire to be. Uranus is connected with goals and aspirations as well, of course. So anyway, another thing too is that Uranus is connected with the unusual. So it could be some, unusual situation you're dealing with. If natal Uranus is in the fourth house, it could be pertaining to your home and family life. Maybe there's a lot more people that have come into the home than, as an example, or something happened where maybe there was a disaster or flooding, or something where something unusual, unexpected happened, which is really conflicting with what you want to do in terms of what you want to learn and aspire to be, and really going after your future at this point in time. Now, anatomically speaking, Uranus is connected with the ankles, the shins, calves, nerves, circulation. Now, when you have this transit, if you have any issues with what I just described anatomically connected with Uranus, it may derail your future, at least put a stall on it to some degree, and it might make it more difficult to pursue issues that may need to be addressed and confronted at the time of this transit. Another thing is that Uranus is also connected with innovation and ingenuity. And it might be a time where, if you've been planning, to doing something innovative, you had a new idea or concept, you might feel at this time that, as far as your future goes, maybe it's not the time to bring it out. It might be you don't feel this is part of your future at this time, and don't mean that you won't bring it out. But at this point in time, you might feel it's just not tied in, where you're directed to. There might be something else that might be taking priority or precedence at this time. Uranus is also connected with groups as well, groups, clubs, organizations. Again, you might not, as far as where you're directed toward, you might not be, with this at this time. It might not be doing things that are team or group related at this point in time. It might be a time where you might feel, it might be a more independent period for you, where you really prefer, to do things by yourself. You may be more averse to doing things with groups at this point in time. Uranus can be connected with society as well. You might not feel that society is in agreement with what you're pursuing at this time. It might be one of those things where you feel like society is against what you're doing. And say, the transit North Node was in Scorpio or Pisces. Aquarius Aquarius is connected with astrology, but Pisces is the metaphysical, which includes astrology, and Scorpio is connected with the occult, which can include astrology. You might not feel that the society is really in tune to what you're doing at this point in time. And Uranus as well is also connected with computers. And you might be doing something where maybe, if you've been on the internet for a while, and you've been, dominated by social media, it might be where, you might feel at this time, maybe there's a break from it. You might not be directed toward doing as much on the computers and on the internet as in contrast to what you did previously. Or maybe there's some computer issues that you might be dealing with that might be derailing you from where you feel you're directed toward at this time. And Uranus is connected with astrology. So if you're doing some, and as far as other professions, astronomy, innovation, electronics, altruism, hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, and those things might not be, if you were involved in them, it might be where you don't feel your future is necessarily tied into it at this time. You might be taking a break from it. You might not feel as directed toward those things, or there might be matters with what I just described might be impacting maybe your future negatively, or you feel like you're not able to pursue it because distractions of what I described as far as like professions or what have you, or hobbies that can be connected with Uranus. Now, another way this transit may manifest, it could be that qualities that you need to develop may conflict with your goals and aspirations. Now, if the transit north node, say, is in Libra in the 10th house as an example, it might be perhaps expressing just simply tact and diplomacy, which is Libra. It could be with the dominant parent, which is often the father, authority figures, and older people. Now, which is associated with the 10th house. Now, also, too, another way this transit may be expressed, it could be that issues that you need to confront or address may challenge activities with groups. Now, let's say if the transit north node is in Scorpio in the 3rd house, it could be something involved with crime or corruption, which is Scorpio, in your neighborhood, which is the 3rd house. Now, also, too, at the time of this transit where your future lies, it might conflict with friendships at this time and groups and clubs. Now, let's say if the transit north node is in Taurus in the 7th house as an example, it could be your future might lie at this time with having stability or having persistence more with your relationships with the significant other, which is the 7th house. And again, reiterating what I believe I said previously, now issues, if you have any issues, say, with the ankles, the calves, the shins, the nerves, the lower legs, circulation, which is connected with Uranus, might make it harder to pursue perhaps what you feel your mission, your purpose, where you're destined, or where your destiny is, where it might be harder to do so at this time. Let's say if the transit north node is in Pisces in the 5th house as an example, it could be maybe creating some hypothetical simulated, which is Pisces. It could be sports matchups or some kind of game which might be involved in hypothetical sports matchups. Pisces is connected with fantasy, hypothetical, the imagination, and of course the 5th house can be connected with games and sports. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.